There is a man, you have met him before. He does not raise his voice. He does not defend himself. He does not explain where he was, what he meant, or why he made the decision he made. When someone insults him, he says nothing. When someone questions him, he says nothing. When someone tries to provoke him, destabilize him, drag him into their chaos, he says absolutely nothing. And somehow, pause, 2 full seconds, everyone in the room knows he is the most powerful person there. Not because he is the loudest, not because he is the most aggressive, not because he has the most money or the highest title or the biggest presence, but because he has mastered the one thing that almost no human being alive has ever truly learned to do. He has learned to need nothing from the people around him. No validation, no agreement, no understanding. Pause, and that singular quality makes him completely, utterly impossible to control. On screen, never react, never explain, never justify. This video is about how that works, not the surface version, not the motivational version, where someone tells you to stay calm and calls it wisdom. The real version, the psychology underneath, the architecture of power that Machiavelli understood 500 years ago, and that almost nobody is willing to talk about honestly today. By the time this video ends, if you listen to every word, you will never see silence the same way again. And more importantly, you will understand why every time you reacted, every time you explained yourself, every time you justified your choices to someone who was never going to understand them anyway, you gave away the one thing you can never buy back: your power. Let us begin. Part 1. The trap. When someone provokes you, when they say something cruel, something unfair, something designed to make you feel small, your body reacts before your mind does. Your heart rate climbs, your jaw tightens, your thoughts accelerate, and in that moment, the most natural thing in the world is to respond, to defend yourself, to correct the record, to make them understand that they are wrong about you. This is the trap, not because defending yourself is wrong, but because of what it reveals. The moment you react, genuinely react, with emotion, with urgency, with the need to be understood, you have just handed the other person a map of your interior. You have shown them what moves you, and whoever knows what moves you controls you. Machiavelli understood this at a time when the cost of being controlled was not embarrassment. It was death. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, where alliances shifted overnight, where a wrong word to the wrong person could unravel a family for generations, the men who survived were not the most righteous. They were not the most honest. They were the most unreadable. On screen, the unreadable person is ungovernable. Think about what it means to be unreadable. It means no one knows your breaking point. No one knows what hurts you. No one knows what you want badly enough that they can withhold it. And if no one knows those things, if your interior remains sealed, then no lever exists that anyone can use to move you without your permission. Pause. Now think about the last time you reacted. Really reacted. Lost your composure. Sent the message you should not have sent. Raised your voice when silence would have won. explained yourself to someone who was already decided against you, what did that reveal? It revealed that they had found the lever and they pulled it and you moved. The psychology here is not complicated, but it is brutal. Every emotional reaction is a confession. When you react with anger, you confess that the thing they said had the power to disturb your reality. When you react with defensiveness, you confess that their opinion of you matters enough to require correction. When you explain yourself to someone who attacked you, you confess that their understanding is something you need, and need is the beginning of every cage ever built around a person. Part 2, the lie. Let us talk about explanation, because most people genuinely believe, that if they could just explain themselves clearly enough, the other person would understand, would see the truth, would revise their judgment. This belief is one of the most expensive illusions in human psychology. Here is what actually happens when you explain yourself to someone who has already decided to misunderstand you. You talk, they listen, or seem to. And as you explain, as you lay out your reasoning, your intentions, the context they are missing. They are not updating their view of you. They are looking for the next opening. They are finding the next contradiction. They are storing the new information. You are voluntarily handing them for future use. You walked in to defend yourself. You walked out having given them more ammunition. Explanation is ammunition in the wrong hands. Machiavelli wrote about this not as a philosophical point, but as a survival observation. He watched princes, educated, powerful, well-intentioned princes, lose everything because they could not resist the impulse to be understood. They explained their decisions to people who had already chosen to oppose them. They revealed their strategies in the hope of building support. They justified their cruelty, their alliances, their compromises, and in doing so, they handed their enemies a blueprint. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called the sunk cost of justification. When you explain yourself, you invest emotionally in the outcome of that explanation. You need it to land. You need them to understand. You need the explanation to work. And now you have two vulnerabilities instead of one. Not only do they know what bothered you enough to explain, they know you are waiting for a particular response. And if they withhold that response, if they simply do not give you the understanding you came for, you are more destabilized than when you started. The person who never explains has no such vulnerability. They made a decision. They acted on it. They have moved forward. If you do not understand why, that is your problem, not theirs. This is not cruelty. This is the psychology of people who have understood something that most of us take decades to learn. You cannot explain your way into the trust of someone who has decided not to trust you. You can only demonstrate it over time, through action, or not at all. Part 3, self-erasure. Justification is the most seductive of the three. Reaction feels instinctive. Explanation feels reasonable. But justification feels virtuous. It feels like honesty. It feels like accountability. It feels like the behavior of a good person who wants to be understood correctly. And that is exactly why it is the most damaging. When you justify yourself, when you say, I did this because, you have to understand the situation was, I know it seems like, but actually you are doing something more costly than losing an argument. You are telling the other person that their judgment of you is a court you recognize. You are standing before them as a defendant. And defendants, no matter how innocent, do not command the room. On screen, the moment you justify, you become the defendant. Robert Greene observed this. In his study of power across centuries, the most powerful figures in history, the ones who survived, who built, who shaped the world around them, did not seek approval for their decisions, not because they were above reproach, but because they understood that the act of seeking approval retroactively reduces the person seeking it. You are essentially saying, I need you to agree that I was right. And power, real power, does not need agreement. It acts, it moves, it shapes, and it does not look back to see if you are nodding. Think about the most powerful person you have ever known personally. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, the most powerful. Did they justify their decisions to you? Did they explain themselves? When they made a choice you did not understand, did they spend energy making sure you knew their intentions were good? Almost certainly not, because genuinely powerful people have developed a kind of immunity to the need for external validation that most humans never lose. And that immunity is not indifference. It is something more precise than that. On screen, it is not indifference, it is sufficiency. The state of being enough within yourself, that the absence of someone else's understanding leaves you completely intact. That is the psychological state that makes a person untouchable. Not wealth, not status, not intelligence, sufficiency. Part 4, silence. Now we come to the mechanism itself. Because silence, true strategic silence, is not simply the absence of words. It is a force. It moves, it presses, it creates pressure in the room that words cannot. Pause. When you speak, you determine the conversation. When you stay silent, the other person must fill the space, and in filling it, they reveal themselves, their anxiety, their assumptions, their need to know what you are thinking. Most people cannot tolerate the discomfort of another person's silence. When there is no response, the human brain begins to manufacture one. It assumes the worst. It becomes preoccupied. Screen. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. And here is what is extraordinary. The silent person has done nothing. They have said nothing. They have moved nothing. They have not lifted a single finger to destabilize the other person. And yet the other person is destabilized completely and entirely by their own psychology. Pause 4 seconds. This is the power Machiavelli pointed to when he wrote about the prince who governs through presence rather than proclamation. A prince who must constantly announce his authority has already revealed, but a prince who simply is, who moves through rooms without explaining himself, who makes decisions without justifying them, who receives attacks without dignifying them with response, that prince occupies psychological space that no one else can claim, because no one knows where the edges of his power are. And what has no known edges appears limitless. Pause. This is why silence is feared by the people who have never learned to use it. Not because silence is passive, but because silence, in the hands of someone who understands it, is the most active thing in the room. On screen, silence is the most active thing in the room. Part 5. The practice. Everything you have heard until now is worth nothing if it stays abstract. So let us be specific. Pause. The first practice is this. When provoked, wait. Not a polite pause, a genuine, deliberate interval. 3 seconds, 5, 10 if necessary. In that interval, the provocation loses its urgency. Your body chemistry begins to normalize. The impulse to react, which is biological, not rational, begins to fade. And in that space, you can choose. Not react, choose. This distinction between reacting and choosing is the entire gap between the person who is controlled and the person who controls themselves. On screen, the only person you must first master is yourself. The second practice, when asked to explain, redirect or remain silent. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Every person who demands your reasoning has earned access to your interior. The redirect sounds like this. I understand you see it differently. And then, nothing more. Or simply, I've made my decision. Full stop. Not cold. Not hostile. Just final. The finality is the signal. The person who has made a decision and does not revisit it under pressure communicates one thing above all. Person cannot be moved by pressure. And if pressure does not move them, what leverage does anyone have? Pause. The third practice. Build your internal standard and answer only to it. This is the deepest practice and the most difficult because it requires you to develop a clear internal sense of what you stand for and what you will not compromise, and then to hold that standard privately, not announced, not performed, not explained to others, so they will understand you, simply held. And when you make a decision that aligns with that standard, you require no one's blessing. You need no one's agreement. You know what you did and why. That knowledge is completely inaccessible to anyone who wants to use it against you. Pause. Long. It is a vault, and a vault with no known combination cannot be opened by force on screen. Know your own code. Share it with no one. Closing. The return to silence, 1615 to 1730. The close must feel like the video was always building to this moment. Return now to the man we began with, the one who says nothing, who explains nothing, who justifies nothing. Now you know what he is not. He is not cold. He is not superior. He is not performing indifference. He is simply a person who has stopped needing what most people spend their entire lives trying to collect: the approval of others, the understanding of others, the agreement of others. Pause. In releasing that need, in genuinely, completely, releasing it, something profound happened to him. He became available to act without hesitation, available to move without permission, available to build, decide, withdraw, and return. On his own terms, in his own time, without explanation. Machiavelli did not write about becoming heartless. He wrote about becoming free from the psychological dependencies that make ordinary people permanently available for manipulation. Never react, because reaction hands them the map. Never explain, because explanation hands them the ammunition. Justify, because justification hands them the verdict. Give them nothing, and watch what nothing does to the people who built their power on needing something from you.